No one, ladies and gentlemen, is facing the Game 6 pressure more than Steph Curry, more than Jason Tatum, couple superstars. How will Golden State's superstar and Boston's superstar bounce back from disappointing and appalling performances in Game 5? Yeah, the heat is going to be cranked up tonight inside TD Garden as the Warriors have a chance to win their fourth title in 8 years. Some would even call tonight a must-win for the Celtics. You guys and gals are watching The Sweat, presented by DraftKings. I am Emerson Latzia. Welcome to a Thirsty Thursday edition of The Sweat. I am looking forward to covering the bases around the majors. We're going to look back at an epic Stanley Cup final opener last night and also some bets here to keep an eye on for Game 2 on Saturday. But let's get going with our NBA panel here. DK contributor Chinmay Vaidya, RotoWire's Nick Whalen. We'll talk some Game 6 DFS coming up in this show, everybody. But right now, we're going to dive into the sports book. But first things first here, what's the game plan? What's the game plan for the Celtics to avoid elimination, Nick? And why is it don't turn the ball over and make your freaking free throws?
Yeah, well, the turnovers are what I was going to hit on first. I mean, for one, you can't commit 18 turnovers, and you also can't only force 6 turnovers, especially if you're going to commit 18 on your end. I think that was the biggest story coming out of Game 5, and that's why Golden State was able to survive just a terrible game from Stephen Curry. You know, coming out of Game 4, we're thinking, man, Steph might have to score 40 points every single game the rest of the way if Golden State's going to win this series. And then he comes out and has maybe his worst finals game ever, and Golden State still wins by 10. I think that's what's really devastating if you're the Boston Celtics. I don't think Boston's going to lay down. I don't think they're going to give up hope, but losing that game in that fashion, only scoring 94 points on a night when Stephen Curry was just ineffective, I think the lesson learned there is Steph's going to be better. Clay will probably even be better in Game 6. You cannot let someone like Andrew Wiggins be by far the best player in an NBA Finals game that includes Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, so Chinmay, what do you think tonight? What is the game plan for the Celtics? How do they avoid elimination? Is it more of like their players stepping up or maybe shutting down those role players, as Nick mentioned, guys like Wiggins on Golden State?
Ultimately, it's a make or miss league, and Boston just needs to start making three-point shots. Derek White, I think, was 0 for 3 from behind the arc. Jaylen Brown, 0 for 5. You just can't have that in an NBA Finals game against this team. And I think it's that simple, that Boston starts making perimeter shots and the game starts condensing a little bit for them, because it can't just be as simple as drive more to the right side versus the left side for Tatum and Brown and Marcus Smart. I mean, I think that's a ridiculous thing to say, that every time Boston drives to the left, they struggle, versus every time they drive to the right, it's an automatic bucket. So I think Tatum needs to play more efficiently, obviously, but the perimeter players need to start hitting perimeter shots. And, Horford has slipped off since his Game 1 showing, but Derek White needs to step up. Jaylen Brown needs to step up. I think Marcus Smart hit a few shots in Game 5. He needs to keep that going, and maybe Horford hits a couple. Grant Williams gets some more minutes in there. Boston just needs to hit more three-pointers, because right now it looks like in the half court they're really struggling to get consistent production from their offense. So I think if they can get perimeter shots going, that'll really help them when it comes to closing this game out at home.
Flopping less would also help Marcus Smart. It's been a series of matchups, guys. Steph outscoring Tatum. Wiggins, as we've mentioned already, coming up big on the glass. On the DK Sportsbook, there's head-to-head markets for points, rebounds, and assists. So what's a matchup you're looking at for tonight in Game 6, Chinmay?
I think there's 2 value matchups that you can really get here. Plus money, Jason Tatum ahead of Stephen Curry for points. I think that's a really good one. And then Klay Thompson, I think he's matched up on Jaylen Brown. Brown was really inefficient in Game 5. And as we know, Game 6 Klay is a huge narrative for NBA fans. So I think Game 6 Klay does show up to a certain extent and gets ahead of Jaylen Brown. And give me Jason Tatum ahead of Stephen Curry, especially if it's at plus money.
All right, what do you like here, Nick?
Yeah, well, unfortunately, there's not a Andrew Wiggins versus Wilt Chamberlain rebounds head-to-head available tonight. But I think Chinmay's right on Klay Thompson. That's the one, I think, value-wise, that jumped out to me. I mean, yes, chances are Jaylen Brown probably scores more points than Klay Thompson. There's a reason. It's kind of I'm going to use the word whopping, minus 255 here. But getting Klay at plus 200, to me, this should be a little more close to even. Yeah, I know Jaylen Brown's a little more reliable, a little more of a dominant ball-handling type, but Game 6 Klay, I mean, if you think Klay's going to hit 4 or 5 threes in this game, which I think you do, you're already at 15 points right there. He's been getting to the line at a decent clip in the playoffs. Can still hit mid-rangers every now and then, still gets to the rack. And Jaylen Brown, I think he's been the Celtics' best player and most reliable scorer in this series, he's still Jaylen Brown at the end of the day. He's definitively a number 2 guy. I don't think he's quite on that level of someone who you can say, yep, we'll just count on him for 25 plus every single game in the finals. He still has those letdown games every now and then.
All right, let's go to a player prop or potentially here a player special you like on the DK Sportsbook tonight, Nick?
I love these player specials on DK, and I love that they organize them by odds. You could just keep scrolling down and see what's like more and more unlikely. But I think I got to ride Klay Thompson. I think you could pretty much build any kind of special prop that you want involving Klay or even Steph and Klay. You could go Klay and Steph to each have at least 15 points in the first half. That's 5-1. You can have Curry to have at least 20 points in the first half. That's also 5-1. Klay, 4 made threes in the first half, plus 550. Like I said, the further you scroll down, the more value you're looking at. One that I don't think is like that unlikely, and it's sitting at 20-1. Steph Curry to score 20 points and have at least 4 assists in the first half. If we're expecting a major bounce back Steph game after that 0 of 9 performance in Game 5, if he comes out and looks like the Steph from Game 1, I think that's very possible.
All right, Chinmay, talk to me here, dude.
I'm not going to go quite as off the reservation as Nick scrolling down in the player specials, but I do like Klay Thompson over 3.5 3-pointers. He's hit this over in each of the last 3 games. Game 6 narrative, he might feed into it a little bit, but he's also playing about 40 minutes in each game. So the playing time is going to be there, and the shots are going to start falling, or they have been falling at least over the last 3 games. And I also think Jason Tatum over 27.5 points. He needs to have a big showing at home, especially after all the talk surrounding his performances over the last 2 games on the turnover front. So I think Tatum over on the points and Klay Thompson over on the 3-pointers made are 2 good bets for tonight on the player prop side.
Well, Chinmay, speaking of the last 2 games, they have both gone under. So the line right now in the DK Sportsbook currently sitting at 210. So if it closes at this number, it would be the lowest total in this series thus far. How are you feeling about the total?
It really depends on who you think is going to win the game, because the Celtics have gone over in both wins that they've had, and the Warriors have gone under in all 3 of the wins that they've had. So this really depends on who you think is going to come out and win this game. And I'm going to take the over on this one. It is starting to creep a little lower than some of the totals in the previous games. And if it does close at this, it'll be the lowest total. So I'm going to take the over for now. And I think really the way to bet this is who you think is going to win this game.
All right, Nick, how do you feel here, man? Because we already talked about the Celtics squandering too many of those freebies from the line, and it's going to be physical. Maybe the refs get a little more involved tonight, clock stopping, that kind of stuff. You want the over?
Chinmay is spot on about, kind of game flow. If you think Boston's going to win, history suggests that this game will go over. The games that they've won in this series, they've shot the ball pretty efficiently. They've hit a bunch of threes. In the games that they've lost, they haven't even gotten to 100 points in any of those 3 games. So I think Boston's going to win at home, so I'm going to take the over, but I don't feel great about it. I usually like betting unders as the series goes along. A lot of the kind of matchup issues that you see early on in a series, for example, letting Steph Curry hit 6 wide open threes in the first quarter of Game 1, like things like that get tightened up as the series goes along. Rotations are shortened. All the tweaks that you can make when you're playing a team for the 6th time in a week and a half. All those things tighten up, and that usually leads to lower scoring games. You also look at the pace, which is for the series, 95.1. That would be the lowest pace. Like no team played at a pace slower than that during the regular season. So that's about what you expect at this point in the playoffs. Every possession matters. And as the series goes along, you tend to see these games played more slowly and more slowly. But I do think Boston bounces back. I think we see one of those kind of barrage nights from 3 where they hit 15, 16, 17 threes. And that's probably enough to push this one just over. Okay, so then, Nick, you like the Celtics covering 4 points at home tonight and forcing a Game 7? Yeah, I do. You can take them with the points. You can take the money line. Not a massive difference. And every game in this series, like has been the theme of the entire playoffs, it's kind of been a blowout. Even the games that have felt close have always found a way to end, within 8 to 12 points. So I don't think this is going to come down to a buzzer beater necessarily, but I think we get a bounce back from Boston. For the first time all playoffs, they lost after a loss in Game 5. I think they kind of get back on that trend, and we get a Game 7 Sunday night. All right, Chinmay. Boston has been the best bounce-back team in the NBA this season until Game 5.
Yeah, and you kind of feel like the Warriors have figured out the Celtics a little bit. This does feel a lot like that 2015 finals matchup where the Warriors went down to the Cavs 2-1 and then won 3 straight and then clinched that finals on the road. However, I do think that this Boston team has shown so much resilience over the course of the regular season, and in this postseason they were down 3-2 to the Bucks and came out with an all-time performance in Game 6 of that series. So I'm going to take the Celtics here. And of course, as Nick mentioned, every game of this series has ended up being a blowout. It hasn't been as close as some of these spreads have opened up at. So I'm going to take Celtics to cover tonight, and I think they do force a Game 7.
Yeah, Dubs finished with 5 guys putting up 14 points or more, including 21 from Klay Thompson last time out here. Guys, great job. Appreciate it. You two are free to go. We're going to take a DFS look at tonight's Game 6 between the Celtics and the Warriors coming up right after we cover the bases with Bukes and Brother Fryer. Nice work, guys. I don't know if we're
Thank
clear
you,
yet.
guys.
Thank you, sir. All right, see you guys. Enjoy the game tonight.
All right, thanks, homie. Baseball. The Braves are streaking. Oh, yeah. 14 wins in a row. One shy of the franchise record. Just 4 games behind the Mets. Oh, and Raffy 2 Scoops cannot stop hitting bombs. That's now 4 straight games he sent presents to the people. And if you're keeping track, Ken Griffey Jr. holds the record with 8 straight games with a moonshot. Speaking of taters, DraftKings contributors Steve Buchanan and Nick Fryer are here. Here to cover the bases on this 9-game main slate, DFS and Sportsbook plays. Hey, Fryer, there's a watch party, a Game 6 NBA watch party tonight at Fenway Park because the Red Sox are playing a day game. So on first base here, what's your favorite bet on the early slate of games?
I'm actually going to look a little bit more towards the Midwest and that Cubs-Padres game. Obviously, it was an ugly one the other day. I really like Luke Voit a lot in this one at 1.5 total bases, taking the over on that. He's going up against Matt Swarmer, who I know had that one rough outing and seemed to be doing fine prior to, but he had been struggling with lefties. Obviously, Voit is not a lefty, but a lot of his damage has come against right-handed pitching. 9 extra base hits in his last 10 games after that brutal start to the season. And he's got a 40.2% hard contact rate against right-handed pitching and a 248 ISO. So I like him to get over 1.5 total bases. And with Musgrove on the mound, too, if you're looking for a run line play or money line play, I like the Padres in that one, too, at -115.
Okay, Steven, between that 1 o'clock and 3 o'clock window, what do you like here, dude?
Well, first of all, it's great to be in the presence of the newest social media influencer in Emerson Lots here. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Thank you kindly.
Making big moves, big influencer as he sips his coffee. And I hit my camera. So the Red Sox are continuing their series against the Oakland Athletics. These teams have played each other 5 times already.
Yep.
You know how many times the Red Sox have covered the run line in all of those games?
I'm going to say
every single time.
I was going to say everyone.
Every single time. This Oakland team, we talked about this, before the season began. Take the under on everything to do with Oakland. Working out just wonderfully so far this season. And then we're going to go on the run line once again. -1.5. You're getting +120 on that. That feels pretty enticing. I mean, the Oakland Athletics are usually always the underdogs on the run line, and they're one of the worst teams on the run line, going 29-35 on the year, whereas the Red Sox are one of the better teams on the run line, 35-28 on the season. You know, Rich Hill, very old guy, still on the mound pitching. Oakland's numbers against lefties, some of the worst in the league. Everything just aligns here for the Red Sox. And once the Red Sox get into that Oakland bullpen, over the past week or so, their ERA, relievers combined, about 8.5. Good Lord. Give me the Red Sox at -1.5.
Dude, they're like outscoring the A's a bajillion to like 3 or something. And they're like 5 games that they've had against them this season. Buke, second base, which DFS play? Who are you going to pay out for tonight? Can talk about a starter or a hitter.
Yeah, you don't even really need to pay up for this guy, but Rhys Hoskins has been absolutely annihilating the baseball. 4,400 tonight going up against Patrick Corbin. Let me tell you something about Patrick Corbin, okay? There's not many things I can say about him that are family-friendly, that we can say here on the Sweat. So I'll just put it in a family-friendly way, and he is struggling on the mound, as he always does. But Rhys Hoskins, over the past, 5 games, he has at least 2 hits in 4 of those 5 games, was 4 for 5 2 nights ago with 44 DraftKings fantasy points, and he's been hitting for power too as well. 3 doubles, a triple, 2 home runs over that 5-game span. He is absolutely on fire right now, and now Nick Fryer is just going to agree with me because he was very dramatic in his reaction when I said Rhys Hoskins.
Okay.
That's just what happens when smart baseball guys get to go first, so now he's just going to look like he's trailing my pick.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Fryer, I got to agree with Steven here. Hoskins' price is like criminally low on DK right now.
Yeah, he is, and that's why he was my favorite play for tonight too. Because looking at what he's done against left-handed pitching over his last 54 plate appearances, he's absolutely obliterating them. He's crushed Corbin over the course of his career. Corbin struggling against right-handed hitting. I'm not going to waste your time much more in that because Steve is, I can't go that far. I can't give him too much credit. But the other guy I was looking at in that game too, if we're going to look at starting pitchers too at the higher end value, Zach Wheeler. He's rolling right now. He's been providing you 25 DK fantasy points in 6 of his last 8 starts. In one of those starts, he still got you up to 20. Of course, the Nationals, they don't strike out a ton against right-handed pitching, but we just saw the other day they got with diced up for 11 Ks. So I think that he's still in a good spot there. And you look at what the Nationals have been doing against right-handed pitching too. They're bottom 3rd in the league against in OPS, ISO, WOBA against right-handed pitching too. So I think this Philly game's I like quite a bit tonight. That the Philadelphia side of this one.
Steve, Corbin does look washed, and I totally forgot that. Last year, the Nationals let him start 31 games despite an ERA that's floating around 6 too. So
And then they invited him back again this year.
Yep. And all of a sudden his velocity's down and walks are up. You absolutely nailed it. Let's go to the hot corner, Bukes. Favorite value play in DFS tonight?
Yeah, Ezekiel Duran for the Rangers. This is not somebody you probably even know who it is off the top of your head, but he is very, very cheap, 2,500, batting about 6th or 7th in the Rangers lineup. They've been flip-flopping him around a little bit there, but since he's been called up to the majors, he's been making a big impact for this team that needed an impact player. Against righties, 402 WOBA, 250 isolated power, and a 168 WRC plus, averaging 9.7 DraftKings fantasy points against righties. So somebody who's near the bare minimum that you can take in the infield feels like a pretty nice value play for tonight, going against the Tigers, who I couldn't even name 3 players that are on that team right now, and I covered this league for a career, so it just goes to show the amount of talent that's on the Tigers right now. Some people like them in the beginning of the season. How's that working out for you? But big shock there. Tigers not making any big moves. So I think Durant tonight, 2,500, really strong value.
All right, Mr. Fryer, save us some money, but do so with an individual who could also provide potentially a lot of points.
Yeah, well, Steve's over here dragging the Tigers, understandably so, but I do like the Tigers starting pitcher tonight at 5.9K. I think he can save you a lot of money. Bo Briesque, and just for the sake of argument too, Miguel Cabrera, Javier Baez, Austin Meadows, Jonathan Scope. You said you couldn't name 3 Tigers players. There's 5 for you right there, Steve. So do better at your job, please. But when you look at this Rangers lineup that Briesque is going up against tonight, they're 7th in K rate against right-handers this season, and since May 20th, their K rate has been a tick higher than the 23.8% rate that they've got going. And also they're bottom 10 in ISO and WOBA against right-handed pitching too. And Briesque too, I understand he's had some really rough outings. You look at that season ERA, not exactly promising, but look at what he did in his last couple starts too. He's got a little bit of momentum going, and he did against 2 quality teams too. That momentum can be huge for a rookie.
All righty. Steven, wow, he's staying on top of you this morning. Extra bases, favorite? No. Home. Let's go home. Favorite run line or money line bet? Let's do that first. Fryer.
Oh, me. All right. I like the Phillies, of course, tonight. Talked about that one a little bit. Them on the run line, of course. Zach Wheeler, as I mentioned earlier, he is rolling right now. We already talked a little bit about how bad Patrick Corbin is. Whether you're looking at righty or lefty, it doesn't matter who's going up against him tonight. I love this Phillies lineup. Of course, you can try and stack some guys in this one when you're looking at it from a DFS side. But yeah, I mean, like the way the Nationals have been playing of late, and the way that Zach Wheeler's rolling right now, I have no reason to not like this one at like minus 120.
Bukes, you got a favorite run line or money line bet on DK Sportsbook?
Yeah, of course. And, Nick Fryer can put on his resume that he nailed 5 Tigers players during a segment on the Sweat. That's really going to help him.
His LinkedIn page.
His career.
That's what he would do. He would add it to his LinkedIn profile.
Yep, that can be his headline. Name 5 Tigers players. Martin Perez is the modern-day Pedro Martinez pitching for the Texas Rangers and goes up against that Tigers team that Nick Fryer is so in tune with against them tonight. Taking them on the run line to win by 1.5 runs. I have no problem with that at plus 110. Perez has been absolutely out of his mind when taking the mound this season. I don't know why. I don't know how, but I don't care because the guy keeps making us money. The Tigers are one of the worst offenses in the league against lefties, 286 WOBA, an 86 WRC plus, and they're striking out almost 23% of the time. With the way that Perez is pitching, I don't know what's happened to him, but he's been seriously, legitimately untouchable. Had an 0.64 ERA over his last 5 starts. That is absolutely absurd. Give me the rejuvenated Martin Perez against this Tigers team that Nick Fryer is a big fan of and has all their jerseys.
Dude, you've been talking a lot about Martin Perez lately. I know you miss him here in Boston, don't you?
Well, with the way he's pitching, yeah, I miss him in Boston now. Why couldn't he do this last year or a couple of years ago? Now
true.
I miss him.
It's true. I got one more for you guys. Favorite player prop for tonight's Major League Baseball slate on the DK Sportsbook. Take me there, Fryer.
So I mentioned I love this Phillies game. Of course, Rhys Hoskins over 1.5 total bases. We talked about him a ton. Zach Wheeler over 5.5 Ks. He hits the over on that one on the regular. Now, when you're looking in terms of value, though, you're not going to get a whole lot on the payout for either of those two. So if you parlay them together, that turns into plus 205. I like that one a lot. I'm not usually one for going that high on these same game parlays, but I think that these two guys can both hit the over on those numbers.
Bukes, give me a winner, baby.
Yeah, I think taking really anything to do with Luis Severino going up against the Rays tonight, I think is a strong bet. You can get over 6.5 strikeouts for him at minus 135. A little bit juicy there, but this has been a number that he's been hovering around for a while. And this Rays team, they're going to go up there and be hacking, baby. They're not going to go up there and draw a ton of walks. I think this is a strong number for Luis Severino, who's looked really, really good so far this season. I think this is a strong spot for him. So give me over 6.5 strikeouts for Severino, minus 135.
All right, guys, thank you so much for the help. Appreciate it. You two are always tremendous with each other. We're going to talk Stanley. Fryer, why do you always make noises like that?
What are you talking about?
Yeah,
Steve's the one that makes the noises at the end of the segment all the time. I did make one friggin' noise, and now we're complaining.
Whoa, language,
hey.
dude. Language. Chill out, man. It's Thursday.
Yeah, family-friendly show. There's no need to do that.
What are you talking about?
Easy. Woo-saw, my sweet
Inappropriate.
chinchilla. Really inappropriate. Okay, he's been suspended. So we're going to talk Stanley Cup and NBA Finals, DFS, still to come after this break.
Total idiot.
Oh, that was great. Oh, Fryer almost lost. It took overtime, but the Avs have a 1-0 series lead in the Stanley Cup final after a thrilling finish Wednesday night. Andre Burakovsky playing hero for Colorado by netting the game winner. So finishing off a strong effort by his team on home ice. And they did a good job. I'll give them credit for that. Let me get rid of that. That they held off an impressive comeback effort by the Lightning. RotoWire's Paul Bruno and AJ Schultz, two of the best dudes to talk hockey with. They are joining us now. Little sticky puck action. AJ, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe you liked Colorado to win it last night, right?
I believe that's accurate. Team USA going up against a pair of Canadians yesterday. But we had it right for the home side.
You
here.
did.
But
I mean, you did a great job. I mean, how do you think the Avs were actually able to get it done too? And I think what was even more impressive is not even them getting out to the hot start, but holding off Tampa Bay.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think the big key was that hot start. I mean, everybody was speculating, myself included, how good were they going to be in the opening period because they've been, off for so long. They clearly prioritized that and brought it there. Obviously, when that happens, a lot of times in like the second period, you'll see a team kind of sputter out a little bit because they bring so much energy in the first period. They were able to kind of power through that, play through that, and get to Vasilevsky. That was the key here for them. So I do think the strong start is what set them up well, gave them the momentum, and then they were just able to last the rest of the game and into overtime.
Yeah, what do you think, Paul? I mean, even AJ was wise enough yesterday to, fade the Lightning netminder.
You know what? That was a good call, as it turned out. A number of the Avs forwards did what they normally do, and that's skate like the wind and put on offensive pressure. I didn't expect that early on. I thought that they would try and get into the pool at the shallow end, but they went right into the deep end. It was telling in the way that the three stars were Burakovsky, Landeskog, and Rantanen. Odd that it was an Avalanche sweep, though, in an overtime game, but that's the way it sometimes goes in that particular gambit. But I thought Nichushkin was their best player, leading the club by a wide margin in total shot attempts, while also leading the team with 6 shots on goal. And that was my call yesterday that went well. I didn't see much from the Lightning offensive leaders, Kucherov and Stamkos particularly. Didn't find their way near the prime scoring opportunity areas all night long. And we saw that big territorial edge for Colorado that I expected. But the goalie wasn't really tested that much. I was surprised by that. A key element for me, though, guys, was the fourth line usage. Colorado only used their guys for about 6 or 7 minutes. Tampa went a lot heavier, of almost 12 minutes across the board for their fourth liners. I think that had to do with something about getting used to playing at altitude. I think with a couple of days off, you're going to see a different Tampa team in game 2.
Well, Paul, it was also refreshing to see Braden Point returning to the Lightning lineup. He's missed a couple series here, had almost 18 minutes of ice time, and was on the power play as well. And then there's Darcy Kemper, who returned to net for Colorado. He got the Game 1 victory, as we know by now. But what impressed you the most about those two guys last night and their performances?
Well, I watched Point very closely, and I thought he looked like he was in pretty good form. He seemed engaged, playing with the usual fire that he brings every night. The edge and pace was there. Maybe he was gasping for air in the late stages, though. I don't know. But I thought he was engaged and looked like he's I'm expecting him to be a bigger factor as the series goes on. I like what I saw to him. I find it hard to evaluate Kemper, though, guys, because I really didn't think Tampa got that many great scoring chances on him. Not unusual for the guy, though, because he plays behind this team all year long, and there were a number of games that went this way for him. So very hard to get a read on him. I think we're going to see more attack mode from Tampa, and that'll get us a better gauge on where his game is at in game 2.
Yeah, AJ, I mean, Kemper faced 23 shots in 3+ periods of hockey, and he allowed 3 goals. I mean, and you look at some of the underlying numbers, it's actually even worse for him there. I think there's still some concern for him between the pipes.
Yeah, I mean, Paul kind of alluded to it. There were only 8 high danger chances for the Lightning in that game, so they really did not bring it to Kemper there. So I think that's what we could expect out of him, though. I mean, Darcy Kemper is not going to steal games for them. His role is just to keep them close enough to let the offense do its job. And that's what they did last night. So I'm not too worried. If they really get into a bind, Pavel Francouz looked okay in the previous series, kind of the same role, game manager, if you will, to use an NFL term.
All right, guys. Well, as we look ahead here to the next game, game 2 is going to be Saturday night. Last night, Not many of the stars found the back of the net. Are you looking at any of them, though, to score for like a goal prop in Game 2 on Saturday night? The numbers as of this moment are not out on the DK Sportsbook, but despite whatever the odds are, do you like someone to light the lamp on Saturday night, Paul?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, we saw a quiet effort for Stamkos and Kucherov. I don't think you're going to see 2 in a row out of them. So sprinkling a little money on both of them makes sense to me. And then McKinnon took a couple of periods to get started himself last night, wound up with 5 shots on goal and looked pretty good by the end. I think you'll see a better effort of him. And Cale Makar might have been the biggest no-show of the 4 big guns. I know he plays defense for this team, but he's a big part of their offense. We all know that. But it was hard to find him on the ice last night, even though Colorado did win.
Okay, AJ, what do you think here, dude? Who do you think has a good shot putting the biscuit in the basket?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Paul. I mean, it might be worth just taking everybody. Honestly, the odds should be good enough for that to be a viable option. But if you're going to just pick one, for me, it's Nathan McKinnon. 5 shots on goal. He's averaged about 6.5 over the last 3 games here. So I really think he's going to keep shooting the puck. And so for me, if I'm just picking one of these guys, it's probably McKinnon to score a goal. But out of the 4, I really think you could bet all 4 and reasonably cash out anyway.
All right, well, we do have Conn Smythe odds available right now up on the DK Sportsbook. So Cale Makar, Paul, who you said kind of just disappeared last night, is still the favorite here, actually tied with Nathan McKinnon at plus 140. Then there's Andrei Vasilevsky, who has won this thing before, at plus 600. How much interest do you have in maybe fetching a little bit of value with some of these Tampa Bay guys after a Game 1 loss, AJ?
Well, I was on possibly taking Kucherov at plus 400, so there's no reason not to double down on that. I still think the Lightning have a good chance to win this series. I mean, nothing major comes out of this for them, right? Like, they still have 3 games at home, still have 2 opportunities to pick one up on the road versus Colorado, so it's not a huge loss for them in that sense. And so if they win the series, I think Kucherov hands down is the guy. So if I was on him at plus 400, might as well stick with him at plus 600.
Okay, maybe Steven Stamkos plus 5,000, a little bit of a sleeper, Paul?
I love that call. That's exactly where I was going, because the guy, it's his turn. He didn't have much to do with the last one of the playoff runs where he was limited to 1 shift, if you'll recall. And this year he's leading the club in offense. So in terms of the goal scoring side anyway, picking up some key goals along the way. And I just think we're seeing a lot of leadership out of him in this postseason. And that's a factor, too, that'll weigh in. Sentimental choice, too, no doubt. 3rd time if they win it. And he will be represented well in the voting if that turns out. But if you favor Colorado, I'd be looking at Gabriel Landeskog, their captain. He's, again, playing a big role. See, this guy is also their captain, and it could be a leadership thing that decides this issue. So I'm looking at the captains on both sides here.
All right, last one here, guys. What's the early lean on the DK Sportsbook for Game 2? So Colorado, the favorites at home, minus 150 there on the money line. Goal total at 6 right now, Paul.
You know what? Tampa needs to win this game. I don't see them, either team, winning a streak of 4 or 5 games in this series. So I don't think they want to give Colorado the 2-0 edge, even though it is on the road. And they would come home for the next 2. I like the money line bet. It's still an attractive one. It's been fluctuating between plus 130 and plus 150 in the last 24 hours. Still looks like a solid play for me. I think the Bolts looked a little tired. And remember, playing at the high altitude is a factor, and they may not have accounted for that in their preparation as they probably should have. They'll be better prepared in Game 2. And I'm still going to give Colorado a lot of credit for the way they played, coming off a long layoff. But I do think we're in for a long series, and that means that Tampa needs to answer the bell in the second game.
All right, AJ, I know it's only Thursday, Game 2 Saturday, but what's an early lean you have right now?
I like the over in this game at 6, minus 110. You've got the push still in play. I wouldn't be surprised to see that move to 6.5 as we get closer to the game. So a good opportunity to jump on this one. We saw 7 goals in Game 1. I really think it's possible we could see some more high-scoring games in Colorado. When the series shifts back to Tampa, I would take the under. Vasilevsky just seems to play better at home here. But for now, heading into Game 2, I do like the over.
All right, boys, go enjoy the rest of your Thirsty Thursday. We're going to poke back over to the hardwood. We'll talk some DFS for Game 6 of the NBA Finals going down between the Celtics and the Warriors tonight in Boston right after this break. All right, folks, take a look at your screen. We did the DK Sportsbook angle of Game 6 of the NBA Finals earlier in this show, so go ahead and rewind if you want to catch some of the best bets for tonight. Right now, we're going to do top DFS plays. We do have Matt Meiselman here, but on your screen, you can see some of the top performers, their cost, what they will cost you tonight in the showdown. So not a shocker here to see the two best players on both of these teams are the highest priced in the captain column, in the utility column, and Curry and Tatum. Curry averaging, the only player averaging north of 50 DK fantasy points per game in the NBA Finals through 5 games. Jason Tatum, despite having a few bad games, still averaging 47 points. Got to give it up for him. Matty Ice, we asked Nick Whalen, we asked Chinmay Vaidya earlier in this show, what needs to be the game plan for the Celtics tonight in order to force a Game 7? What do you think here, Green Teamer?
The part of me that's more frustrated just wants to give the answer of like just score more points than the other team.
Yeah, you can't do that. Sound like an
can't do
analyst
that.
for once, you coward.
All right. All right, I'll give a real answer. Honestly, I think if they just play defense the way they played Game 5, they win this game because the defense was so good and the offense was just all over the place. And really, like, there's no way their offense is going to be that bad again. So I guess one answer would be just repeat the game again, but don't make as many mistakes. And then really, like, to get a little more specific, if they can just take advantage of mismatches, because the amount of times that they didn't realize Gary Payton II was the primary defender, and specifically Jaylen Brown drove right into him and lost the ball. Like, I have to imagine that they went to the tape and saw that, and it's like, just go after Curry, go after Clay, go after Poole. So really, I guess offensively, the key to me would just be to take advantage of the weaker defenders and stop trying to score on Gary Payton. He's too good defensively.
How nervous are you that Wiggins is going to go off again?
I am not so nervous about that. I'm nervous about the Celtics offense, really.
Okay.
Like that's what's giving me the most concern right now. I think Wiggins will probably play well again, but that's not my main source of worry. There are a lot of reasons to be worried about this series right now.
So,
Wiggins is in the top 5 reasons, I guess, but it's not number 1.
all right, you're a little nervous about the Celtics offense, you just said. So are you not going to go with a Celtics for your captain's pick tonight?
No, I still think I will, and a lot of this just has to do with the price. Like Curry is way more expensive he's actually more expensive than Tatum.
Yeah,
I think
$600.
This series, Tatum had been more expensive earlier on, but I'm going to go with Jaylen Brown, who's just a lot cheaper than these two guys, and I think that Brown will have a better game. I think they will try to get Brown isolated more onto Curry and onto Klay Thompson, and he should be able to continue to take advantage of that matchup. But this is mostly a price thing. Like, it's really hard. There just aren't cheap players in this game throughout the series where you can play Tatum and Curry at captain and not have to jam in like a couple players who you just wouldn't want to have to play. So playing Brown at captain gets you the savings. That's really the biggest reason that I like him here, because I do think Brown, Curry, and Tatum all have a ton of upside, but Brown gets you a lot of savings. So I think he makes more sense as the captain play.
All right, so then who do you need in your lineup with him?
So I like Marcus Smart here, and I'm a little worried that too many people are going to be on him because there's this idea that Smart is way better in home games. So that's not actually why I'm going with him, but I do think, I think ultimately he should be more contrarian than Wiggins, who's coming off the huge game. And I think that factor overrides the factor of Smart potentially getting an ownership bump for the game being in Boston. But Smart's just a little more expensive than the other guys in this mid-tier, like Draymond Green also, like Wiggins, who I just mentioned. So I just think the ownership on Smart is lower than most of the guys around his price. And he's been a pretty good fantasy player throughout the playoffs. Like, I just think that he can have a big upside at this price, but it's more about the ownership for me than anything else. I think Smart just makes the most sense given that consideration.
All right, because I'm looking at their numbers now, and like Wiggins is just $200 more than Marcus Smart, and he's averaging 7 points more a game, and not to mention a double-double in 2 straight games. And if you want to just look at his past 3 games alone, Wiggins is averaging nearly 45 fantasy points an outing.
Yeah, so more people are going to play Wiggins. After hearing that, whatever people want to say about Smart being like having a home road split, I guess I don't really care about that too much. But yes, Andrew Wiggins is going to be a very popular DFS play tonight. So I guess Marcus Smart is really just a pivot off of Andrew Wiggins.
All right. Little contrarian mindset then. You're just going with less popular pick. Obviously, you stand out more in some of these big-time contests. You separate yourself from the pack that way. I like your thinking, Matty. That's why I love talking to you. Is there anyone you're going to fade tonight? Is there anyone you're like, I got to proceed with caution, or people should proceed with caution if they're going to consider rostering him?
Yeah, so I'll go a little. I know the contrarian moves are fun. I'm going to fade someone who I actually don't think will be that popular, and I just think he's way too expensive. And that's Jordan Poole, who's $5,800. He played 14 minutes last game, and he was good in those 14 minutes, but I think the Warriors are realizing Wiggins needs to be out there. His defense is too important. I guess his everything is too important. He's just been really good for them. And Peyton's defense has been so big for them in this series. And I guess he was hurt early in the series. He missed game 1. Peyton's minutes have ramped up throughout, though, and it's come at the expense of Jordan Poole. So when Curry's on the court and Klay Thompson's on the court, and both of those guys are playing big minutes too, they just don't need Jordan Poole to play that much. Like, he's essentially functioning as Steph Curry's backup right now. So if the Celtics, I mean, hopefully we get like a Celtics blowout, and then I'm wrong about this take because Poole plays garbage time. Like, that's what I'm hoping for. But in reality, this is likely to be a close game, and I don't think Poole is going to play a ton of minutes because there are just other guys on the team who are more important than him.
Yeah, he rewarded DFS players with 15 fantasy points, which was surprising last time out, which was surprisingly his second lowest fantasy performance of the NBA Finals. So you just said you're hoping for a Celtics blowout. I need to just get a straight up pick from you. Who wins tonight? And just go ahead and just tell me why you're going with the Celtics.
Okay, I am going with the Celtics. I don't like, my gut feeling is that they're going to lose, honestly. But that's just nerves. Gut feelings don't matter.
Yeah, you're setting yourself up for, like, if you expect to be disappointed and have your heart broken, like when it happens, you expected it.
Yeah, pretty much. That's exactly right. But the numbers suggest, just like based on how I've looked at the entire season and how the Celtics have played throughout the playoffs, I still think strength of schedule throughout the playoffs strongly favors them. And all of that adds up to me to just make the Celtics the better team. And they're at home. So, like, they should win this game as long as they don't screw up too bad. I do think they win this game. I don't know if I'm going to pick them in Game 7 or not, but I think the gut feeling is it's bad, but I think they should win the game.
All right, man. Well, I know you're going to be crushed when the Warriors are celebrating their 4th title in 8 years tonight.
I will be, yes.
on your home floor. I'll text you. I'll check in on you. I'll make sure you are good to go throughout the night.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, Matty. We got one more block to go. We got one more break to go. We got NFL hangover, talking some rumors around OTAs and mini camps with Jeff and Pierce next. Welcome back, everybody. Final block of this show, The Sweat, presented by DraftKings on a Thursday. Thanks for being here. We appreciate it. Thank you so much to Jeff Ulrich and Pierce Dietrich for being here as well, because I have some NFL questions that producer Drew wrote up. So I'm just the messenger here. No one get upset with me if you don't like them.
Oh.
Yeah. Minka Fitzpatrick, guys.
Already throwing people under the bus.
Dude, Steve threw him under the bus earlier in the show, all right? I'm just riding that wave.
It's this thing, though. That's just what Steve does. So.
Yeah, this is an NFL hangover segment. We're overreacting to OTA minicamp storylines here, guys. Minka Fitzpatrick, he just signed an extension with the Steelers. He's going to make him the NFL's highest paid safety. They already have Watt and there's Fitzpatrick and Hayward. They're all signed through at least 2024. This is a big, big money defense. Should we be buying this squad this year, Jeff?
It's funny. You didn't even mention your boy, former Jacksonville Jaguar, Miles Jack, getting jacked in the middle of the defense here. I mean, on paper, everyone's expecting this unit to bounce back. And I think they're going to be good in spots for daily fantasy, because the sack rate's going to be high, I think, with Jack in there and Hayward. But, they lost Devin Bush, who retired. He was a really good run stuffer inside, obviously missed a year, and that hurt them last year, and he's not back. I don't really like what they've done on the outside that much, like Levi Wallace, Ahkello Witherspoon. Are those guys really going to stand up against, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins? I don't know, man. I mean, I see it, and I think they'll be fine, but I don't see this necessarily as being an elite defense. I'll still think they may have a little bit of trouble stopping the run. And I think they're going to have trouble stopping guys like Chase. So I'm buying that they'll be a little bit better, but I still think the Steelers team, I don't think they're necessarily going to be top 3 elite or anything like that.
Yeah, Pierce, we know how good they were in the sacks department, but back half of the league when it comes to points and yards allowed.
Yeah, I don't know if it's quite fair to compare how they're going to match up against Jamar Chase. No one can stop Chase. Witherspoon was the 13th best rated cornerback according to PFF. Hayden leaving the team is an upgrade. He had a veteran presence, but he was really terrible. Levi Wallace played well his first 4 seasons for Buffalo. Not so good last year, but you got to realize that Tre'Davious White wasn't there helping him out. I think if he is in Pittsburgh, surrounded by good players, Wallace will be a better player. Jeff mentioned Miles Jack. Miles Jack is still only 26 years old. He was great the first handful of seasons. Last year, for whatever reason, he just completely fell off a cliff and was absolutely terrible. But now, since he's going to be surrounded by star players everywhere in a great system, I would not be surprised to see the old Miles Jack return. We're still waiting on Devin Bush. He was the 10th pick overall in 2019. He hasn't done anything, and that really is the question. For me, I think the cornerbacks are fine, the safeties are fine, the pass rush is fine, but can these linebackers step up? And I think Jack and Bush, surrounded by good players, Pittsburgh will be a dominant defense.
I mean, Jeff, they're shelling out a league-high $116 million dedicated towards the defense, and you know this more than anyone else. A good defense isn't going to get it done. That defense has to be great when they're breaking in a new quarterback, too.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, I'm not necessarily suggesting Pittsburgh's going to be terrible. Like I said, I'm just not sure if they got enough to go top 3. But Miles Jack is definitely talented. I definitely agree with Pierce there. And I think that if he does bounce back, it'll be a big story of why the Steelers, just as a unit, bounce back as well in 2022.
All right, now we got to find out in our nation's capital, is Terry McLaurin going to get what he honestly deserves here? Because he has skipped the last 2 days of minicamp. Ron Rivera says a deal will get done. Ron Rivera also saying, no, we're not trading him, so stop asking me about it. How much is this going to hurt the offense this year? I guess, Jeff, how successful can this offense be without this guy? And Carson Wentz needs him more than anybody else.
Yeah, he does. He really does. You always try and play devil's advocate and look for things, but this would be bad for Washington. I mean, I kind of like Jahan Dotson, but relying on a rookie to come in and all of a sudden just replicate what Terry McLaurin can bring for you, that's a really risky thing. And you look at Carson Wentz and just, how he plays. Obviously, playing behind a good O-line. He was okay in spots last year, but, he did have, Michael Pittman as a big target on the outside. And McLaurin can just, obviously he just draws attention. Whatever he does, he's good at creating separation. He's good at drawing people downfield. So without him on the field, guys like Samuel, Dotson, who's ever starting at tight end, it's probably not going to be Logan Thomas at the start. And even their running backs, there's just not going to be as much space on the field. Teams are going to be able to stack boxes. This team needs Terry McLaurin on the field. Ron Rivera's right. Trading him would be stupid. He's a number one receiver who, I think there's still lots to give here from McLaurin too. I mean, don't forget who he's played with in his first couple of years of his career. Taylor Heineke is a big part of that story. So, what he's done and able to put up numbers with the quarterback play so far, it kind of tells you what kind of player it is. A player I think will eventually break out for a top 3 kind of wide receiver season. They need him on the field. It'd be a big loss. And as far as fantasy goes, I mean, this team, I don't want to say be dead without him, but it would not help for sure. Anyone on the field.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This is a guy who has constantly delivered as their leading receiver since he entered the league. I think it was 2019. And Pierce, to go off of Jeff's point here, last season, 77 passes he caught, north of 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, easily leading Washington in all 3 categories. They're in trouble without him.
Well, what about with him? Let's just assume that he does sign and everything works out.
Yeah.
Are they really that good if McLaurin plays? Is this Washington team really that imposing? I mean, what do we expect? What are the expectations for Carson Wentz in this match? I just don't see it. Last year, he had a good offensive line. He had Michael Pittman. He had a great running back supporting him and allowing him to have open passing lanes and keeping defenses honest. He had an offensive coordinator and an offensive head coach that were offensive minded and allowed him to play. And he still got 3,500 yards, 27 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Those are decent numbers. Do we really expect him to have better numbers this season playing for Washington? Ron Rivera is not going to turn him loose. Ron Rivera is going to have him as a game manager. There are some weapons, but they're not as good as the weapons as they had last season. The offensive line, yeah, they had issues last year, probably hit the worst by COVID. You remember they were starting a plus-size male model at one point. He was like a fourth stringer. Their line's going to be better, but I don't know if it's going to be that good. They made some additions, but their additions were just basically making up for some of the guys that they lost. I don't expect big things from this Washington team.
Yeah.
So Pierce is exactly right. I agree with that. But the thing is, if McLaren's not there, it's just going to be worse. Like they're going to go from average to worse. So yeah, I still think he's a big part. And I mean, we start a plus size male model every day in Emerson. So I mean,
plus size male model, dude. That was Emerson back in college, like college Emerson. He was thick with 2 C's.
Bring back college Emerson. He seems fun.
Yeah, he's a good guy. He's a really good guy. My wife actually says all the time she really misses him. I'm like, oh, okay, dude. I guess I'll just stop clanging and banging and shredding in the gym all day. Anyhow, last one here. We got a couple minutes ago, so let's speed it up a little bit. Lamar Jackson has returned to the Ravens' offseason practices. Hollywood Brown, though, is now in Arizona. Pierce, how are you viewing the rest of the Ravens' skill position players this season in DFS?
The Ravens are fine. Mark Andrews is one of those guys. It's incredibly hard to cover one of these tight ends. You can't put a cornerback on them. Even if you could, the cornerbacks are too small, so then you have to put a safety and a linebacker on him, and then that opens up the rush attack, and that opens up, the Ravens who love to run the ball. They have a really well thought out offense. Their wide receiver core is lacking, but really you look at the previous seasons when the Ravens were strong. It was a tight end, it was a running back, it was a running quarterback. Their wide receiving core has never really been the threat that you worried about. They're young, they could be promising, probably won't be. I think the Ravens are going to be just as good as they ever were.
All right, this could spell trouble for Mark Andrews. Do you think so, Jeff?
No, I don't. The Ravens' offense is all built around the run and an RPOs, and that's why Mark Andrews gets open. And it's not built around Hollywood Brown. Sorry. Rashad Bateman will be just fine as a replacement. This offense is going to run just as it was. Devin Duvernay is not bad. I mean, yeah, it's not a good-looking receiver core, but they don't need high-end receivers. They've tried it. They tried to get in guys. The offense doesn't need it. Rashad Bateman's probably going to be better than Hollywood Brown in a lot of ways. A guy who Hollywood Brown just disappeared for games. So yeah. I think this offense will be just fine.
The healthy stable of running backs will certainly help Jackson. As long as they don't lose all 6 of them within 3 days like they did last year in camp. That was absolutely brutal. So still kind of impressive when you consider what they go, 9-7 or something. I don't know. I can't even remember off the top of my head. Is that even 9-9? I don't know.
Yeah,
they lost every single cornerback during the year too.
Yeah, so, thank you. Exactly. That's what I was trying to think about. All right, guys, that's it. That's a show. That's all the time we have. So Madden kicks off at high noon. Looks like it's the Eagles and the Vikings. And then Kaufman, Shiraga, Meiselman for some NBA Finals talk tonight on the slate at 5 o'clock. I'll see everyone back.
I'll be there, too.
Wait, you're going to be there?
I'm the tail end. Jeff's going to be there.
What are you going to talk?
U.S. Open and NHL.
Oh, okay, cool. Awesome. Morikawa's still leading, maybe? I don't know. Rory's had some interesting shots today, too. We got to go. We're out of time. I'll see everyone back here tomorrow morning, 11 o'clock Eastern time. No.